Hello, my name is Michael Nolte. In 1986, I was charged and tried in Oklahoma for first-degree felony murder and was sentenced to death row for first-degree murder, and had a trial and went to death row, spent 11 years on death row, and went to death row angry, mad. Got to death row, decided that I was going to earn a death sentence because I couldn't believe that I was charged with first-degree murder. So when I get to prison, I was a pretty incorrigible inmate and did everything I could to cause trouble and disruption. Ended up on a unit that AS'd me, actually administratively segregated me, and from death row I was the only prisoner to ever in Oklahoma to be ever AS'd on death row. So I was a handful, and I was a handful because I was angry. And because I was angry, I was far away from God. I had no concept of God. So when I get to death row in 1987, I was disruptive, hung out with some Aryan brothers, and just real angry. And so I was a disciplinary problem and locked up. And as I was locked up, I was involved in some fighting and different things. And so a man came to prison, and that man was named Ted Robinson. And 28 years ago, he came to my door, and I was going to cuss him out because I didn't like prisoners. I didn't like preachers coming to my door. So I called him over and told him, "Hey, preacher," and he decided to walk over to my cell, and we had a conversation. He asked me to, go to chapel service, and I told him, well, religion for me in prison is a sign of weakness, and so I didn't want nothing to do with it. And he asked me if I'd go to a chapel service. I went to a chapel service a few weeks later and discovered that Ted Robinson was there. But I was there for the wrong reasons. I went there to stab another inmate, and me and my buddies were in the back row being real disruptive, and I came to stab a man who had no issues with me at all. He just had issues with my buddies, and so I rode down with my buddies, and we were there causing a big disruption. And this man, about 6'4", came there and said, we didn't sing a song, he didn't pray, he didn't do anything, but I remember him saying, "If you're tired of being sick and tired, raise your hand." Well, I didn't know nothing about an altar call, I didn't know about any of that, and so I just was sick and tired, so I raised my hand. And as I raised my hand, I was shackled in cuffs and leg irons, and he said, "Well, come on forward," and I went forward, and I remember walking past the guy that I was going to stab. I had such conviction. I went up front, and all I remember this man saying was, "I'm not going to lead you into prayer, but you can go home tonight and you make that decision by yourself." Well, I didn't make that decision that day, but I remember walking around, and to the guy I was going to stab, I remember just reaching over the guy and putting my arms around him, and I remember telling him I loved him. And I never ever said that to another man in prison, and I don't know why I said it, except for the power of the Holy Spirit. I was under such conviction at that time. Didn't really know what conviction was, and so I hugged him, but the guards knew something was going to happen, so they all rushed in and just froze because I took my hands off and walked back. And now my buddies are looking at me thinking, "What did you just do?" And from that point forward, I had to live for Christ. I didn't make the decision then, but I knew I had to live for Christ because I took a stand that day. And in prison, if you take a stand, you better stand, because if not, you'll fall for anything. And I took a stand that day, and several months later, I ended up getting saved, radically saved. I had a 3-day experience with the Lord. A lot of people called it a road to Damascus. I called it my road to McAllister. But I just got radically saved, and everything I could about Christ, I learned about Christ. I enrolled in anything I could. Never had a Bible in my hand. I found myself getting Bibles and commentaries, and I just became hungry for Christ. And I met a man one day, came to my cell, and he said that the chaplain brought him there to show him the most changed man in McAllister, and it was Mike Barber. And Mike Barber came, and I got to look eyeball to eyeball with the guy, and he was just an amazing guy. He was somebody I admired in sports, and so he automatically had my attention, but I knew his heart. He got to expose his heart to me, and we just developed a great relationship. He's an amazing man, and the more and more people that God sent into my life, I felt more and more responsible to live for Christ. And so I ended up going and just doing everything I could to impact my community there in prison. And the longer that I spent, I just really didn't think about my charge. I didn't think about while I was there. But in 1994, I got a stay of execution. And a lot of people don't know, but I actually got down to 6 hours and 6 minutes before I got a stay of execution. And I'd sent my goodbyes, I had made my phone calls, ordered my last meal, and all of that. And so, you know, when I got a stay, of course, I was angry at God because I was ready to go home. I said, to be absent from the bodies, to be present with the Lord. I was ready to go. And so I got angry at God, and for about half a year I was really wandering and questioning why God gave me, because now my sentence said life without the possibility of ever getting out of prison, which meant I would die in prison. I was hopeless, helpless. I went through despair. I went through some dark moments. And finally I realized that a guy came to me that I hadn't seen in quite some time, and he came to me and said, "Man, you impacted my life. You ministered to me several years ago." And I remembered him. And now he was ministering to me, and it affected me greatly. So that day I made that change back, and I never wandered away from God, but I questioned God. I would always serve God. I'd always go to chapel. But in my mind, I wrestled with God for quite some time. And so for about a half a year, and when that happened, I again, just my passion for Him and trying to get my community affect anybody. I tried to win anything that was breathing, guards, staff, it didn't matter. And so I started hearing about DNA. And DNA wasn't around when I was convicted, and so I started hearing about DNA. And I thought, well, man, DNA, that could help. Because nobody in prison cares about if you're innocent or not, because everybody in prison is innocent. So I never really told a lot of people. I remember telling Ted Robinson one time. I remember telling a few other people, and even told Mike Barber. And Mike Barber's been told that a million times. And, you know, everybody tells that you're innocent, you shouldn't be in prison. But so I started hearing about DNA, and so I thought, well, I'm going to write my county. So I wrote the county several times, and as I wrote the county, they said, "We don't have the evidence that you're looking for. We don't have any of your evidence. It's gone." So I'd write again, and they tell me the same thing. We just told you we don't have it. Quit writing us. That went on for about almost 14, 15 years, and I didn't really have time to be discouraged, because I was always forward thinking in my ministry there. And so one day I just felt led to call a friend of mine who was a private investigator. And I called this lady and I said, "Kim, could you somehow go to the county and find my evidence and see if it's there?" And it was my last hope. And so she said, "Of course." So she went and took the tour. They took her through the evidence room and took her through all this stuff. And she said, the county clerk says, "See, we don't have it." And as she was walking out the door to the parking lot, she took a wrong turn, opened the door, and the light from the hallway illuminated the bottom of the stairwell where she was looking at. And there was a Brahms sack. And on the Brahms sack it said Nolte. And it was in the basement. They'd meant to throw it away. And it was the very evidence that I needed. She seized it. We took it to a lab in California and exonerated me in 2009. And in 2009, we had the law says you got to file a post-conviction, and I filed a post-conviction. And the law says they had X amount of days to respond, and they didn't. And they delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. and wouldn't answer the judge's court orders, and they just drug it on. And so this is about 2013. I am in the leather shop making some stuff, and I was facing the back, and we had just got word that I had an evidentiary hearing, and I knew that was the thing that was going to send me home. And so I'm just a week away from my evidentiary hearing. I'm in my leather shop. The door opened, I heard it and didn't pay attention to it, and a guy came in and stabbed me in the back. And he wasn't even after me, he was after somebody else. And when he stabbed me in the back, he immediately paralyzed me. I had no legs, and fell to the ground. As I was wrestling the knife away, he ran out, and now I'm laying in a pool of blood, unable to walk. So I slid myself and crawled to the door and opened the door, and the gym was full of people, and I opened the door, and as soon as I opened the door, was a buddy of mine who was a paramedic on the streets, and it was just another miracle from God, and he bandaged me up and called the staff, and I was rushed to OU Medical Center and was told by the neurologist that I'd never walk again. And so now again I'm laying in the bed, just trusting God, getting ready to go home, and now I'm saying, why, God? Why this? What more do I have to go through? And so I pulled the covers up. The neurologist just told me that I was probably never be able to walk. I pulled up the covers, and I'm now wrestling with God again. Within a few minutes, I felt feeling back into my legs, and for the first time in several days I was able to move my legs and move my toes, and was just healed. And I was so overwhelmed because I knew him as a Savior, I knew as my Redeemer, I knew him as my deliverer, and now I knew him as my healer. And so it was just an amazing thing that now I'm laying in bed, not caring about my trial, not caring about going home, but caring that I'm now able to walk. And so at that time, I was again a week away, and so I went from the hospital bed back to prison with a walker. And I went to a chapel service for the first time as I got back, and I'm standing in the chapel service, and I was trying to stand up and raise my hands up. As I raised my hands up, I just got where I couldn't balance myself, and I was determined that I was going to raise my hands to the Lord. And as I raised my hands to the Lord, I felt the strength come back to my legs, and I was healed. And about that time, we went to my evidentiary hearing, and the judge ruled, and the judge said, well, I need 15 days. So I thought, okay, what more? So I go to my 6-month checkup and was diagnosed with cancer. And so I thought, oh, now what? Not again. And so now I had to deal with being healed of cancer. And I thought, I can't deal with this anymore. And I was on the verge of just giving up. My health had gotten so bad. I got down to about 150-something pounds. And I didn't take no radiation, no chemotherapy, or nothing. And God one day just miraculously healed me. And I go to my trial, and this was June 11th, 2015. And June 11th, 2015, essentially the judge just says, Nolte, go home. And as I heard those words, I collapsed. It was like the weight of the world had just got off me. I spent 31 years in prison for a crime I didn't do. And now you're telling me to go home. This is all I've known for 31 years. What do I do? How am I going to live? And so I just collapsed under the weight of it just. And then I was put in the sheriff's car, unhandcuffed, which is not supposed to happen. I drive into the prison unhandcuffed, which is not supposed to happen. And as I walk into the gate, all the guards are standing there looking at me. wondering why I'm not handcuffed. And they're all in the control room now. They figure out that I just now been released. And they're all in the back now clapping, because they wanted it as much for me as I wanted it for myself. And I administered to them just like they were my family. And so as they're standing there clapping, I'm sitting there bawling, crying, so happy. And I get out and have had an amazing life. I've been out since June 11th, 2015, and I have an amazing wife. I have an amazing life. I have amazing people around me, and it's all because people came into the darkness where I was. The Ted Robinsons, the Mike Barbers that came in and had an impact on my life. And I was so amazed at getting out after 31 years of sensory overload now. I've never had a cell phone in my hand. I wasn't one of those inmates that had a cell phone in their hand while they're in prison. I was always the one who was too scared to do anything, to get caught for anything. And so I laid there, and the first night was just overwhelmed with the technology. It was getting out of prison is like getting off a fast-moving train. It just, it just happens, and and you have to gather yourself right away. So I immediately got a job. I already had a job before I got out, and I ended up changing jobs, and I work for a law firm where I help guys in their innocence projects, and just have really surrounded myself with men like Ted Robinson, and men that are accountable, men that are businessmen, and I am so overwhelmed at life and how life has given me, how God has given me such a great life. I am so honored to be a citizen and being a productive citizen.